Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast, where we explore natural foods, share startup stories, and learn how to build a business. I'm Matt Aaron, and today I'm with my co-host, Danny.
Hey Matt, how's it going? That intro was pretty good. I think we're kind of starting to get the hang of how things should go here.
Oh yeah, I think by January 2015, New Year's, we're going to be good to go with our intro and everything.
That's cool. Have you started making any food resolutions?
Well, personally, I've decided to eat more kelp powder, and from a guy who would be described as someone who eats very, very healthy but weird foods, kelp is probably the most atrocious tasting food that I've come across.
Okay, I want to raise you maca, and I want to see who wins there.
That's pretty bad. Maybe we should do a video taste test next year.
Yeah, man, it's always interesting. I always thought I had a pretty good tolerance for food. This means, I don't know if you've ever tasted any, really bad tasting vitamins or, capsules or anything like that with dietary things. But I used to do some of that stuff, and some of them were horrible tasting, and I was able to stomach them. But when I encountered maca, that's where I finally met my match.
Yeah, I think everyone has it somewhere. Maca is really, really, I don't know how to describe it. It's very, insipid, bitter. But I have some kelp here for your next visit to Bogota.
Okay. Well, so how would you describe kelp in 5 words for someone who hasn't tried it?
It tastes like the sea, like just taking grass and putting it in salt water and then taking out the grass.
How's the texture? Any good?
Well, I have the kelp powder, so it's just a green powder.
Okay. Great. So that means a lot of bad taste in small quantities. Okay.
That is right.
I'll go with maca. Maca is not just like dirt, but it's like a peanut buttery dirt that kind of hangs out at the back of your throat. And so you can't really get the aftertaste out, which is just, man, it's unpleasant. It's not peppery. It doesn't have any fruit notes. It's just a tough food to work with. But actually some chocolatiers work with it because it is what many consider a superfood.
Oh, yeah, it's really impressive. And I know a lot of women that have menopause take maca and they rave about it for helping treat their menopausal symptoms. Going back to the taste, I'll say one thing. Standalone, they're both pretty awful, but the one advantage maca has is I think you can get away with adding maca into a smoothie. But I'll tell you something, Danny. You add kelp to a smoothie, there's no way to get rid of that taste. I don't use sugar or anything like that, but just adding natural ingredients, milk, coconut oil, cacao nibs, almond butter, the kelp taste does not go away. I'm not sure if that would be the same with maca. Yeah.
So you can't mask kelp. Okay, we're going to try to get some food scientists on the show, and we can see what they can do with kelp. Matt, so what's going on? You've been hearing about any new food startups, doing any new food stuff, anything new in your world?
Well, I gotta say, I got a link sent from you in Skype yesterday that was pretty interesting about Fluck.
Okay, and Fluck is that new, what is it? It's like an Uber for grocery delivery, not grocery delivery, for restaurant delivery, where people order from local restaurants and then they get the Fluck staff to pick up food and deliver it to them, I think. Pretty cool concept.
Yeah, and I think the concept is really, really based a lot on logistics and algorithms. These are logistics nerds. And after speaking with Abe's, who were pretty strong in that, and I've been listening to a podcast called A16Z, and these are kind of e-commerce and logistics heavyweights, and they talk about Amazon and et cetera, et cetera. And it really makes me think that the end user may not appreciate Fluck as a logistics company, but when you're trying to learn about business and you're working with food where logistics are incredibly important, you begin to appreciate the value of being a master in one of these fields like logistics and operations.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I bet you that UPS beats them all on logistics, obviously because of their learnings all around the United States. But they're trying to catch up and get that information that UPS has had and maybe even make it more efficient. But I was actually just thinking about how UPS saved $3 million one year by figuring out how to eliminate left turns. Man, there's all sort of crazy logistics stories that you get when you start scaling out a company and you start saving on the margin for a large company. Pretty cool.
Right. And as you know, as a small food startup, it can be very difficult to get your logistics right. And you have to eat certain costs because you don't have the economies of scale.
Yeah. And now, Matt, I want to get your opinion on this. Okay. We know a lot of tech entrepreneurs. We're in the food industry. getting to know a lot about manufacturing and exporting. But some of the most impressive food companies, like these food delivery services, these food startups that actually handle refrigeration, they're new solutions that they're not actually so much food as technology companies. Do you buy them? Do you think that they're going to be successful in the long run?
I think, yes, some of them are, but it's just like any type of startup space where for every one super successful one, there's quite a few that go out of business.
Okay. Yeah, I buy that. I think there are about like 5 different companies in US that do food delivery. They might do prepackaged meals, or they might be doing something more like what Fluck is doing. And I think they're pretty fascinating. But I think that what really perks our interest when we hear about them is actually when they get funding. So when Fluck announces more than $2 million of funding, that's when we kind of raise our ears a little bit. All right, another question. Do you think this would work in Colombia, say in Bogota, where you're located at?
Well, I would say this. First off, logistics is a really, really big problem. Right now, compared to the US, the cost of delivery, which means the cost paid to delivery workers, is very low. Uber is very successful, I'd say, in Bogota, despite the political outrage. So if Uber can be successful, I don't see any reason why Fluck would not be successful either.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this business idea before, Matt. The fact is that actually I'm checking out Flux's website, and they talk about how drivers make $25 an hour. Okay, in Bogota, you probably make $40 a day if you're delivering food. So maybe you can bring a startup to Bogota and even be more profitable than what you would be in a major city in the United States.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, with the increasing amount of traffic and cars on the road, Bogota is a place where you can really, really make a lot of money if you save on logistics, because logistics is, just like anywhere, is crucial here.
Absolutely. Now, I would even say, actually, in Medellin, I would say it wouldn't work because I think Medellin is still such a cash economy that credit cards don't work. Payment solutions are pretty bad here. I won't get into specifics, but it's interesting how one city can be different from another city in the same country. That's just my take, though. It's just my gut.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to keep listeners because we do get some questions. A lot of times people are coming down just to visit Colombia, but we do like to profile the 2 cities that we live in and the rest of Colombia just to give you guys a different perspective, because a lot of startups in Colombia are things that have taken off in the US and they've seen it work there, so they bring it down to South America.
Absolutely. Okay, Matt, let's move over to the interview side. So we've got a great interview today. Actually, I'm pretty excited, and you got the scoop on our guest first and kind of what we're going to talk about. So you want to mention who we're talking about today, and we can jump in?
Yeah, we're going to talk to Matt Gray. He is the CEO of the Stoner's Cookbook. And I just want to say really quick, we've been talking with other food startups people. We had a podcast on online marketing, and we've begun to mention social media, how important it is. Honestly, Danny and I are still trying to figure it out for our podcast. But this guy is an expert on social media, and when you get 3 million fans on Facebook and reach over 100 million people per month, those numbers speak for themselves. So this is a great way to learn.
Absolutely, yeah. 100 million people see this Facebook page or see the site per month. I mean, the exposure is unbelievable. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I even venture to say they're probably getting a little bit more traffic than our podcast at this time, at least in November 2014.
Okay, all right. So we're going to have to start a competition and make a case study out of the Food Startups podcast to actually share with our listeners.
That's right. That's right. Well, all jokes aside, I'm going to bring in our guest. Today we have Matt Gray. He is the CEO of the Stoner's Cookbook at thestonerscookbook.com and the co-creator of Herb, the first cannabis cooking coffee table cookbook that is being crowdfunded. Now, Matt, thanks so much for coming on to the show today. And can you tell us, how did you get into cooking with cannabis?
Yeah, so I began cooking with cannabis back in university. I was going to university in London, Ontario, Canada, and me and my roommates began just experimenting with cooking with edibles. And there was a massive learning curve there. There was little information out there. I was using the Stoner's Cookbook at the time to learn, but was not a part of the company at the time. And over the years, I've continued to kind of learn more, meet different chefs who are really experts in cannabis cooking, many of them professionally trained. And from there, kind of my journey just continued to expand, and it's become another hobby of mine. I don't consider myself to be any professional chef or anything, more of a home chef, but I think I bring that kind of perspective to the table when I'm cooking and make sure that people out there that are using our site have ample information to cook at home in a safe and fun manner.
Cool. Now, when was the first time you visited the Stoner's Cookbook? As I understand it, the website has been in existence for a long time, and you joined and have really spearheaded a lot of the efforts at growth recently. So how did you stumble upon it?
Yeah, so the SEO rankings for a lot of the major kind of keywords that you would search when cooking with cannabis lead you generally to the stonerscookbook.com. So at the time I was searching canna butter. The first result was the Stoner's Cookbook. I clicked on the link and this site was the first thing that taught me how to cook with cannabis. And so that's how I kind of came to the site. And that was probably around 2010. And it was pretty serendipitous because about 4 years later, I had been working on an education startup that I had co-founded in Toronto, Canada. And after exiting that company, I really wanted to get into the cannabis industry. And through a mutual friend was actually introduced to the co-founders of the Stoner's Cookbook, who are both from New Zealand. And from there, we got to know each other. I thought I brought a lot to the table and was able to really kickstart the community and help to build a revenue model around the site and turn what was a hobby into a real business. And over the past year, we've seen just explosive growth in the community, and we're actually able to make a living off the site now.
Now, so you shared the passion for cannabis that the original founders, the co-founders had, and that's principally how you got involved. Did you convince these guys saying, hey, listen, I want to work for free with you guys on this? How did that work? That's always kind of interesting because it's quite rare to find somebody kind of pursue a passion and really get into it. But actually, we see in the food industry that it happens a decent amount of the time.
Yeah, so I was introduced through someone who was likely to be an investor at some point down the road, just to put in just a bit of seed capital. I was introduced to Dan and Lucas, who are the co-founders of the site. And right off the bat, I kind of just approached this. At the end of the day, I'd exited my last company. I had many interviews at a lot of big companies and the Googles, the Pinterests, the Ubers, and then also had opportunities to start my own business with someone else. And at the end of the day, this just looked like the most exciting opportunity. And when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I just kind of went heads down. And being an entrepreneur, I just knew what would impress someone. If I was trying to bring on someone, what would I look for in that person? And a lot of it right off the bat is just a lot of initiative, drive, persistence. So I started just putting together like a 90-day plan for where I thought the site needed to go, a vision for the site as well, and then just started executing on that and really had little expectation up front other than just really proving myself and impressing these guys so that I could hopefully become a part of the team. And everything went extremely well. We ended up redesigning the site in March and launching an email list as well as many, many other things. And the improvements that we put into the site have dramatically helped kind of grow the community. In less than 7 months, we've grown an email list from 0 to 145,000 email signups. And across the community, everything's grown around 960%. So things are going really well now. And that's kind of how I got involved.
Now, Matt, for our listeners, as we mentioned, we're always talking about online marketing, how it's really, really important for food startup brands of all kinds. And the numbers that we're reading that you're telling us are incredible. The 900+% growth. You mentioned on the site that one way or another, you're reaching over 100 million people per month. Now, you talked about the mailing lists. What were some of the other keys to growing this community when you came aboard?
Yeah, so there's a lot of little things that at the end of the day kind of all add up to create an explosive growth company. At the end of the day, for us, it was just looking at every single channel and every community we already had and trying to elevate each one of those. And what that really means is just giving the user what they want and really understanding what your goal is. So for us, it was driving more traffic to the site. So what we started doing was the Facebook page was something that was already quite large, around 350,000 likes back in October of last year. And so we started using that page and putting more of a focus on it so that we could draw traffic from our Facebook page to the website. And it's been growing some weeks at 120,000 page likes every week now. And so it's gone from about 350,000 likes to close to 3 million now. I think we'll probably reach that mark this week. So that traffic that's hitting that page, we've now got it down to a science where much of it is being redirected now to the site, which is extremely beneficial. And then there's just working with different kind of content partners, whether it's the folks over at marijuana.com or Leafly, to name a few, and kind of doing different articles with them, having a recipe of the week with them. And then, the email list has been big as well to really kind of keep top of mind, tip of tongue with people so that they're getting emails often from us with really useful content. And it helps create that word of mouth buzz where people are telling their friends and sharing stories, and more people kind of come back to the site after learning from a good friend that it's been useful and help them make some really high quality edibles.
And so this has been mostly, if not all, an inbound marketing approach, creating great content, letting the users create and share great content. Have you guys done any paid type of advertising?
Yeah, we did. Well, so not until very, very recently, actually. The only paid advertising we've done is to try and market the new cookbook that we're coming out with. We experimented with Facebook ads, but we actually found it extremely unsuccessful after 2.5 weeks. So we stopped doing that. That's the only paid advertising we've done.
What's special about cannabis in particular? Is it particularly viral, or how do you get these results by just when you press that Facebook lever, when you kind of go full steam ahead on it? What does that mean? Does that mean hiring somebody to post more Facebook photos, figuring out what works as far as copywriting? Now, we're from a community in the Food Startups podcast that's mostly food-based, but there's a ton of overlap here, and kind of maybe educating some of our listeners on, I suppose, how to go about testing, how to go about challenging your assumptions. Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So on the Facebook side of things, so there's a few things there. So headlines are extremely, extremely important. There are many different kinds of headlines. You have your how-tos, you have social proof headlines, which are things like what Dr. Oz eats for a midnight snack. You have your threat headlines, for instance, the big lie hiding in your apartment rental contract. Really things that people are going to want to click on and are interested in. So that just involves just a lot of, I think, just reading and learning more about just kind of how to write effective headlines, as well as looking at sites or Facebook pages that are already doing a great job with that. So sites like BuzzFeed, like Upworthy, start looking at, there's a science behind everything those guys do. And if you kind of study it a bit, you can start learning, oh, okay, I see how they're really doing things well, and I'm going to give that a shot. And that's what I generally do. I mean, I just kind of go and find people that inspire me, and I just kind of more or less just steal a lot of the general concepts that they're using, because I feel like it will help amplify things on our end. So Facebook specifically, using words in your headlines like smart or surprising, science, history, hacks, any kind of like life hacks for something, or food hacks for this, diet hacks. I don't like, these words are proven really, really effective. Using words like huge or big, critical, just really getting people's interest and drawing them with the headline. So that's one important aspect. The photo is also very, very important as well. It's important if you're posting any article or whatever, make sure there's a really good photo that goes along with it. We use a lot of memes actually on our page, and the memes oftentimes will get over 100,000 likes now and shared like 20,000 times. At the end of the day, they're simple. Oftentimes they're a bit controversial, sometimes very funny, and people are just more than happy to kind of share that with other friends and with whoever. And that really helps the site grow, because people are sharing it with some friends that maybe don't know about our community, and then they find out about it, they like the page, and they go on from there. The last aspect, I would say that this is an interesting one that we were nervous a bit about up front, but so far it's really helped us a lot, is I looked at, so we consider ourselves a cannabis media site. So we're not a product. We're a media site. Our goal is to continue to grow this community and become one of the cannabis portals out there when you're trying to discover whether it's recipes, news on edibles, even different strain reviews or product reviews. We're gradually going to grow the community and the content based on just the feedback that we've been receiving. So I looked at other media sites, and many of these sites, whether it's BuzzFeed, Upworthy, they actually post on their Facebook page around 16 times per day. Yeah, so 16 times per day. We were previously posting 3 times per day. So I started looking into that, and at the end of the day, we increased it to around 12 times a day and saw dramatic increases in the amount of traffic that was being pulled from Facebook to our site. And it just involved creating more content and finding more awesome stuff to share on Facebook. And at the end of the day, as long as you're giving people what they want, there's a recency effect to posting to Facebook. And what's seen in a news feed is more often something that's been posted in the last hour. So yeah, there's just some kind of like weird algorithms and stuff to that, but we've just found a lot of effectiveness that way by increasing the posting schedule as well. And then lastly, just always using Facebook's auto scheduler. I've found horrible results using other third-party applications, whether it's Buffer or Hootsuite. Although I love those things for other social media platforms, for Facebook, they seem to almost consequence you by not getting you as much likes or shares. When you use those third parties, they really want you to use Facebook auto scheduler because then they have you in Facebook. You're more likely down the road to buy ads through them and the whole bit.
Wow. Now, Matt, that was an incredible answer. And listeners, I know you're going to want to see some of the links you mentioned, like BuzzFeed. So this podcast is available at foodstartupspodcast.com/stoners.
Okay, that's really interesting. Do you guys have a team that are kind of continuously executing on best practices? Or at this point, are things more on autopilot? I know, there's this big controversy, or it's a big topic amongst a lot of food entrepreneurs, if they want to have their employees post on Instagram, or if it should be the founder posting on Instagram, or how do they kind of relate to folks on their Facebook page? What have you guys found? Is it more about the analyzing and the discovering of best practices and then kind of figuring out how to get support, or do you guys feel that there's some authenticity necessary to actually really grow out the page?
At the end of the day, it's not rocket science. It's important that I've been working on the page, or I was working on the page for a good 6 months there, and really started to understand what the levers were and what was really working, what was not working. And I think what's important and what a lot of companies forget is that great companies are built off of great processes. So if you're going to go and you're learning a bunch of things as a founder or just a manager of whatever part of the business you're working on, your goal should be to master your job and then actually process it into a document so that it can just be handed off to someone and they instantly can hit the ground running with all the learnings that you've had since taking over that role. So I actually use SweetProcess for that. So go to www.sweetprocess.com. It's an awesome processing tool, basically for you get into a role, say it's at managing Facebook. You can put a bunch of different processes in there with different procedures. It's very clean so that when someone else is going through it, it's almost like a checklist for them. You can add images as examples and the whole bit. So that's kind of what we did with Facebook. I learned everything that I could over the period of time, and then it was kind of time to delegate and elevate and move on to more higher level things and the vision for the company and monetizing and whatnot. And we have now a Facebook manager who just continually learning and adding to those processes, but was able to hit the ground running because of the whole procedures that we had made in SweetProcess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always seems like there's always more to do. And so if you're able to process things out and then, as you kind of said, elevate, that's only going to help your company kind of achieve what seems like to me in case your company logarithmic. I mean, it's honestly seems to be at logarithmic growth if you're talking about having had 600,000 likes a year ago and now getting 120,000 a week. It's incredible. So thanks a lot for sharing those learnings. They're really important, and especially for folks who are starting from 0 Facebook likes or 1,000 Facebook likes, where it's kind of hard to see the big picture. But you always have to start somewhere, and so I definitely appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah. The last thing I'd say is for the people that are starting from scratch, I think another useful thing is there's 2 ideas that I generally tell people. One is to find other major Facebook pages out there that are kind of in your niche or that have users that would be interested in your content, and offer to write blog posts for them or to share their content in your page, almost like in a share for share kind of arrangement. And then the last is, just number 2 is really just, finding sites out there that may be interested in having you as a contributor. And if you can be contributing to that site even just once every couple weeks on a regular basis, and at the bottom saying, hey, if you're interested in more of this kind of content, be sure to check out this Facebook page. And you can start to kind of build up that community.
Now, Matt, let's get into Herb, which is your cookbook that you are launching via a crowdsourcing platform called Inkshares. And as of today's interview, they already have 117% raised. So this book is going to go live. They've raised $22,000. And it's just looking at the screenshots, it looks like amazing photography and design. So tell us a little bit about this book. There already is an ebook called The Stoner's Cookbook, but why did you guys decide to make a coffee table book?
Yeah, so Herb is a high quality cannabis cookbook, which we're going to make the definitive guide to cooking with cannabis. So we've been working on this for over a year now and just gathering tons of feedback from all the users that we have and seeing what they exactly want in a cookbook. And so this is going to be a beautiful 200-page plus cookbook with gorgeous photography and take people through the history of cannabis, the botany of it, and the science and how it affects your brain and the right strain for you. And then after that, we'll get into the extraction methods and teach people how to make a beautiful 5-course meal using cannabis-infused ingredients.
Wow, Matt, when you talk about this, I was just closing my eyes for a second and kind of like imagining all of this imagery and also imagining at the same time the future of cannabis. I don't want to kind of veer too much off topic for a second while we're talking about the book. I want to talk about that a little bit more. But while we're on this, I want to ask you, what do you feel is the objective of the book specifically? And what do you think it can actually do for the industry? Because it seems it's a really ambitious project.
Yeah, so our goal with Herb Mastering the Art of Cooking with Cannabis is really to completely smash the stigma that surrounds cannabis and give people some really high quality, trustworthy information so that in the comfort of their own kitchen, they can learn to cook with this amazing ingredient. So at the end of the day, by giving people really good information, by giving them information on the science of cannabis, the history, so they understand why it was even made illegal, and moving forward into the extraction methods and how to properly dose themselves as well so that they can do this safely and not have to worry about becoming super anxious or anything because they've had too much. Right now, you hear different stories in the media that are perpetuated that edibles can be scary or dangerous. And it really just all comes down to proper dosing. And this book will teach people the proper way to do that so that they can enjoy these really safely with friends. And then we'll take them through a whole 5-course meal so they can really apply the things they've learned so far and have a lot of fun.
Okay, this sounds like such a move to become really the authority in your industry on this. So I congratulate you guys on it because it sounds like it's going to be wildly successful.
Thank you.
Great. Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming onto the show today. Again, we're going to link to everything on our website. We learned a lot about a lot of the best practices that you've used to grow the site. So thanks for sharing that. And we salute you and your effort to kind of destigmatize the ingredient of marijuana.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. And if anyone has any questions or anything, they can reach out to me personally at matt@thestonerscookbook.com.
And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.